click that, see how you can.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, Leo.
Yeah.
How old is everyone?
Yeah. How are you? See. All right, we're gonna get started. Forrest, can you just let me know if you can hear me?
Loud and clear, Chris.
You're loud and clear as well. Thank you. Agenda.
Slightly hot, slightly out, just slightly enough. It's so bad out there.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. It's 3:03 and we'll call this meeting of the Economic Opportunity Advisory Board to order. We'll just go around and do introductions to start. And maybe we can save our guests from USU to the end and let you guys do like more robust introductions and tell us a little bit about your work, just kind of while we do introductions around the room. So I'll start. I'm Chris Wilson and chair of the board.
I'm Deborah McKee. I'm with the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity.
Right, Randy Martin, representing the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce.
Melissa Jeffers, member of the board.
Go ahead, Brittany.
I'm Brittany Melton, and I'm a voting member.
And voting member.
Actually, going about voting member.
Melody McCallum's Grand County Commission.
And then online, Forrest, would you go ahead?
Forrest Rogers, member of the board.
You and Corey.
Was that an invitation for me, Chris?
Please.
Hi, sorry, the volume just dropped off. So I'm Corey Shirtliff, City Moab Community Development Director.
Thank you. And yeah, now do you two just take a minute and introduce yourselves and tell us what kind of you do at USU and things like that.
I'm Samantha Campbell. I'm the interim associate vice president for the campus, so I oversee day-to-day operations. I serve as the director of students, so I deal with all student issues, working with our advisors, our student services staff up there. And so, yeah, I'm here to represent USU Moab. I get to do a little bit of everything up there. It's a really cool position.
Thanks.
And my name is Todd Thompson. I actually work for the Small Business Development Center. We are housed at Utah State University here in Moab. I work with companies, entrepreneurs here in Grand County. I also do some work in San Juan County. So I meet with anyone that has a business idea, business plan, they want to get something started. I help them create their plan, financials, marketing, networking, grants, all that kind of stuff. So I work with them on trying to get money a lot of times. So
Awesome.
and opening up businesses.
Yeah, and just so you know, we just as we were communicating with we just did finish this big grant process for rural county grants, rural county opportunity grants that come from the state of Utah. And as we were communicating with our, folks, we had like 57 applications and we're able to offer some funding to, I think, about 8 organizations, somewhere around there. So we had a lot of organizations that didn't receive funding, many of them businesses. And so we give a plug for you guys, maybe sending some extra work your way. So
Like, for example, there's a grant coming up in August 1st. That smallest grant is 50,000. The largest, I think, is 300. So it's an economic opportunity grant. So we also help businesses. People that I'm working with, I send out that information to them where they know what they're.
I'll say EAG. No?
Hold on.
yeah, I don't know if it's the same. Yeah, okay.
I think
There's a state of Utah economic opportunity.
I'll make sure.
It's
We'll get that from Deborah.
It's on GoVio, you can look at it.
Cool.
So if you go to GoVio website, I'll have to look at it. It's in here somewhere and I can show it to you. It's the Economic Assistance Grant.
Yeah,
So for
we'll
fiscal
share
year
information out
2026, and you can share it out, I can share it with everybody. I think the basic, it's a $4.5 million grant. I think it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 1's 50,000, tier 2's 50 up to 100,000, and tier 3's 100 to 200,000.
Yeah, there's some final adjustments happening with that grant right now, so I haven't been advising on it. That's why I haven't brought it up to the board yet, but it is happening.
Oh.
You're right. It is gonna happen. I
This is
promise.
that 4.5 million, we get it. and then
Oh,
we
yeah,
start
yeah, the
dispersing it
money's
right
there.
away.
We're just doing some administrative stuff behind the scenes before we really start pushing it out.
Cool.
So,
So we'll get some
Yeah.
info about that soon.
Of
We're able to-
course, yeah.
She knows more about that than I do.
Awesome. Yeah,
so.
no,
Yeah.
that's her. That's
but way to go.
She's our rep.
We're working on it, so we're helping.
Pushing it out, so.
Thanks, Todd, and thanks for being here, both of you. All right, so next up, just quickly, conflicts of interest, disclosures, communication. Anybody
Oh,
have anything today?
I'm
that
on
we-
the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, me too, but we don't have any conflicting things in play at this time.
Great, thank you.
And you guys have all just, one thing, you've all filled out your conflict of disclosures with HR, right? Because once you've done that, then you only have to disclose when you have something on the agenda. So as long as you put in anything that's conflicting that you feel,
Okay.
then you don't have to bring it up every time unless it's
I'm
something.
always like, where
I know.
see, like Mike always says something, I'm like, oh,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be said unless it's coming up, but as long as you have that disclosure with HR already.
okay.
Perfect, thanks. Next up, any citizens to be heard? Hearing none. Presentations, I thought maybe Melody, if you don't mind, you could just kind of report back from the commission on the grants. Because you guys made some slight
Oh,
modifications.
yeah, there's a slight modification. So they accepted everything except that they decreased the chamber by $10,000 and 15,000 and split that between two of the childcare providers that had put in applications that didn't make it to the top 13. So that 7,500 to Rock Tots and 7,500 to Jasper's Daycare to do some infrastructure for them. And Rock Tots, it would be, you guys all read these, you already know what they are for, but and then some scholarships at Rock Tots. So other than that, everything else went.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
right, so RCOG, the EMS was approved by the
Yeah.
commission and all the rest of the stuff that we put forward was
Yeah.
approved by the commission. Great, thanks. Mark, do we have anything to say about the economic development staff position?
We are working with a selectee at this point, still negotiations and should have an answer fairly soon on.
Cool, so yeah, so you guys already did
Yes, we've already
applications
done that.
and interviews and everything.
Yes.
That's great. Thanks. Okay, so, yeah, that's awesome. Next up is just approval of the minutes from the May 28th meeting. Anybody have any questions or concerns about those? If not,
I'll move that we accept them.
moved by Ashley, seconded by Melissa. All in favor? 2 minutes, unanimous. Thank you. Right, so next up is the reporting for last year's RCG cycle. And so this is the letter, it's a very simple letter of support for the report, basically, that comes from our board. I can share to the screen. Would it be helpful to put up the report, basically? All right, I'll go ahead and do that. Right there. I know the PDF version was really hard to read, the one that came through like in the official packet, it's just has to do with how Excel gets translated. So this is it. I mean, I think the reporting is pretty simple. I mean, they just received the funds on March 28th. And they have still to spend 182 out of the 200,000. So they've made some, I'm just based on conversations I had with Rob, made some progress in I mean, the vast majority of that is for the classroom. And they've made some progress towards getting a contractor and things like that, but haven't dispersed any of that funding yet. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody had any questions about this. I can then show you guys the letter, the language in the letter that we have, which is also pretty simple.
Did you have an opportunity to go back and clarify that language? Just out of curiosity, I know we had that question about supervision, and maybe Forrest can clarify that.
So let me just put the language up.
Okay,
And then I think some of that might be clear just based on that.
I was just curious because I skimmed it.
So this is the letter, like draft letter that I put together, which really just takes the language straight from the reporting requirement. So it just says, it certifies that the board has participated in advising Grand County Commission throughout the year. And the board approves the content of the report and helps in its preparation. So I think that's the extent of what we're,
So it's just advising the commission, right? Okay,
yeah. I mean, in terms of what the reporting requirement is, that was all that was in there.
You guys might have to catch me up on that. So I thought that they were supposed to build a building. Am I wrong on that?
No, that's right. They just haven't built it yet because they just got the money a couple months ago.
Okay, but that was what it was for, as a building.
Yeah, I mean,
Why is it
Sure, so we'll-
for a classroom? I was confused.
Oh.
It's an add-on to the building
Yeah.
that they have. It's not a full building.
So I thought the Lutheran church owned that, so now they own that building?
the Lutheran Church owns the property. And they have free rent at that property. It's based on my understanding of that part of it. This building is built on that same site. Where there's like a fairly large parking lot
Uh-huh.
area there. That's where the structure would be, and it would be for Moab Community Childcare.
But with like a 99-year lease or something, or because the property's owned by Lutheran church, so I'm just confused by that.
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, I
It's
just
further
wondered.
out. I think we can try to get that clarified.
Okay,
But
I just was trying to understand like the behind the scenes on that.
yeah, Forrest?
Chris, I might be able to help a little bit with that. The church is essentially owned by, the church building is essentially owned by the corporation of the Lutheran Missouri Synod Church. It has no regular pastor. There is one family that lives in Old LaSalle that attends services there maybe once a month. They have been gracious to the community childcare in essentially turning over the space to childcare for service to provide their services there. And Rob has received commitments from that family and through the synod, the commitments to allow a modular building, office building, or classroom building to be installed on their property. In his report, he mentions they're still working on some of the permits. And I'm not sure which ones those are, but this is essentially the Lutheran Missouri Synod being the landlord, with community childcare being the sole tenant of the existing building and the tenant of the new modular unit classroom installed on the property.
Thanks, Forrest. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I think we need a motion to approve the letter coming from the board. Stating that.
I'll make a motion to approve the letter to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, seconded by Melissa. Any discussion?
I think I might just abstain here because I wasn't a part of any of this, so it might just make sense for me not to even comment on it, or, because I don't know. Is that better, or is that fair?
It's your choice.
You know what? I think it may be helpful too, to talk about the purpose and why. Because most of us weren't. I didn't even know we were required to do this. Where it came to our attention is, it was a requirement of the RCG grant to close out with GOEO. And so it has to be uploaded in the portal before the county can file their report.
More sense.
So, yes.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with any of the details either, but I know that the letter that we advised the county on what to do with grants is required by the portal. And so I just want to make sure that we get county admin what they need to be able to close that out. But you're not speaking to the project or the advising. That's why I was clarifying with Chris the language. We're not saying that we consulted with Moab Community Childcare, or we advised them, or we're a part of that process. What we're doing is we're saying that we served our statutory role in advising the commission about what they should do, and that they voted, and that we followed that process.
That makes so much.
And so
more
this
sense.
is basically our assent that we participated in the process to the extent that we were required
So,
to.
right, because if by law,
We did our
we have to
check.
do that in the
I
county
get
in
it.
order for the county to be.
I'm sorry, I
eligible.
was just.
No,
trying
that's
to
fine.
understand.
No, that makes sense.
I have
Yeah.
no idea.
That's why I was
No, thanks.
clarifying
Thanks
with
for asking,
Chris,
because
is
that's helpful.
I had the same question, because my question was, were they asking us and requiring us to say that we had advised on the project? And it wasn't that we had advised and had consulted with the commission or made a recommendation to the commission. So that's why. So it's basically the housekeeping detail that allows the county to then submit their paperwork.
Yeah. To get back.
Is that helpful?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't-
And Chris, may I add to that? This is a step in the process that has always been required. It was mostly driven by staff previously. So Sky and then Ben Alter were the ones who basically prepared the drafts for this particular step in the process.
Great. Call for a vote. Any, all in favor of approving this letter from our board? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Did you end up voting?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, now that I understand, I'm sorry.
No, no, it's totally fine. Thank you very much, and thanks for
Like.
Yeah,
getting it figured out. No, yeah.
It's basically that you all are involved
It's
in that,
unanimous.
you know, being a part of the process, and they're not making decisions without you or your input at least.
Perfect. So I think it was unanimous, is what I saw. Great. So now an update on Rural Community Opportunity Grant application process and the closeout of the Moab Area Community Land Trust, RCOG. So that's the RCOG that was, administered 2 years ago, I guess, basically, or a year and a half ago, something like that. Was, given to the Moab Area Community Land Trust to build infrastructure for affordable housing at Arroyo Crossing. The contract there was set up to close at the end of 2025, right? So they gave them 2 years to do it, which sounds great until you keep in mind that we have to close out a prior RCOG before we're eligible to apply for a future RCOG. And so ideally in the future, you would see those contracts end sometime in late summer of the year so that we're set up to apply for the fall deadline for RCOG the next time around, so that we can bring in as much RCOG money into Grant County as possible, right? So where we're at there is that we now have this challenge because we've got commission approval to apply for an RCOG for the EMS, for the destination training program. But we're only eligible to do so this year if we get this other grant closed out. And so Melissa and Mark and Melody and I have been talking to the Community Land Trust and seeing if we could get it closed out early, basically, right? So that we would be eligible to apply. They have spent, I have this written down. I think it's 182 possibility.
Is this the 600,000 one that they?
They didn't get 600, they got,
500,000 is what ish.
I think it was,
I think it was 3.
Oh, 3, sorry.
yeah, I think it was 300,000. It was like 3. So they've spent 178, meaning they have 120 to 222,000 to spend still. They've spent money on, yeah, utilities basically has been the biggest expense there. And the 120, they need to spend on site improvements also, which really in this case, what it's gonna mean is for this next stage of Arroyo, it would be moving dirt to set up the stage for development there. They are optimistic that it can get done, but it's going to be a challenge to do it. So the timeline looks like this. The RCOG applications are due by October 31st. And we don't have to have all the final closeout paperwork like fully approved by GOEO necessarily. As long as we have submitted all of that, the project is substantially completed or like the funds have been encumbered out of the land trust's hands. And we're like making good progress on the rest of it. As long as like GOEO feels like we're finishing this out and finishing it out strong, then we would be eligible. They have, just for like context, they need to get a plat approved by the county. And then have their request for proposals, they might use a slightly different term for it, but for the contractor, like when they put it out to bid, that also needs to be approved by the county, by county attorney's office, because of some other grant funding that's also a part of this package. That's one of those requirements. So there are a couple things that they need to have like approved by the county and then put it out to bid and then get a contractor and then send out a check to that contractor who's going to do that work, right? So all that needs to happen over the next few months if we're going to have the opportunity to apply for our COG this year. Yeah, I don't have a ton more than just an update to let you guys know that's where we're at. I think we want to push as hard as we can to make all that stuff happen. There are a lot of steps there though.
Question.
Yeah,
So what we're waiting for is for them to spend the money, so then we can apply for more money. Is that what I'm hearing?
they need to spend the money
And
and
they
to
don't,
do the closeout paperwork
and they're unsure about that being accomplished.
in this accelerated timeline, under the
If they-
accelerated timeline.
Till the end of the year to get
Their
it done.
contract gives them to the end of 2025 to like 12/31.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly. That's where it's like, if we could step back in time and rewrite that contract, we would have it written so that it
You have to
ended, I don't
finish
know,
it by,
8/1 or something
Yeah.
like that, which would give us a couple months buffer to work with. That's how they should be done in the future, at least in my
Gotcha.
opinion, right?
yeah.
So a point about that, since we just gave away all kinds of money we didn't give away, we carefully worked hard to select, the grants that we just gave. Those contracts aren't completed yet, right?
Okay, so RCG, the 200,000 that was just approved by the commission.
Yeah.
Those work differently. Once the county pushes that out, that's considered complete from the county's perspective, and from like the state's perspective. So we can close out,
Pushes out, meaning
Like-
distributes funds,
yeah,
and then that, we don't care when they're spent, we don't have to track their.
we don't have to, I mean, we have to do the annual reporting requirements, just like we were looking at for the community childcare. But other than that, like, we don't have to have substantial completion of the project itself in order to be eligible for the next year's RCG.
Because otherwise, ouch,
That would be a big
that was
challenge.
a lot of people.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's all up to the county, how the county structures that sub-grant program.
Well, okay, so those follow a different rule, and our county has structured it in that way, do we know that?
In the way such that
We
it
don't
should
have to wait
be,
for them to spend it. Should we double check?
So it's 2 things,
Okay.
and I would ask Deborah to jump in every time I misstate this. When
I will, I
I
got
say something
yeah.
incorrect, you have my back. Feel free to jump in. The way that the sub-grants, the RCG, our county has decided to treat those as sub-grants. So our commitment with GOEO was, we're gonna take these funds and we're gonna issue them in the form of sub-grants, and then the responsibility of the people that we gave that to, that's with their contract with the county. So their accountability, what they have to give the county, whatever, that is determined by the contract between the county and that subgrantee. But for the county and GOEO, we said we're gonna have a subgrantee program. We distributed the funds. We set up agreements with them. As far as GOEO is concerned, we're finished.
As long as we do reporting.
And when you
Correct.
do that, and when they do, the county or you guys all work together to get that reporting in, essentially you'll lay out, we gave $10,000 to Moab Chamber, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, we're not working with the sub-grant recipients, that's on the county. So we're just looking to know where that money went, all the stipulations of deadlines and stuff between you and the sub-grant folks are up to you.
But the
And the only
RCOG,
reason why I
like the
say that,
opposite of
yes,
that.
is because that's where it gets tricky, where we wanna be careful, is that with the RCOG grant, that is the county's accountability and responsibility. So if we don't deliver on that with our subgrantee, then we are the ones that are on the hook.
Right.
Which is why sometimes it's good to look at what the county wants to do and they're accountable for and they can be responsible for, because if not, sort of like the county is in partnership of accountability with the subgrantee, because it's the county that owns the contract relationship then for performance.
And that's one of the reasons why
And
this
it's
year
trickier.
we, you know, had this recommendation that it's preferable to have the grant actually go to the county itself. So EMS is a good recipient in that sense, or a good potential recipient as part of the county, because the county's already obviously liable for whatever EMS does because it's part of the county. County's not taking on any additional liability for project completion. Like we are in this case with the Community Land Trust to a certain extent.
And a lot of that is because the RCOG is highly competitive, right? So if you have a project that you already have RCOG funds out on and that project's not completed, obviously it's not fair, let's say, for you to go after more money in such a highly competitive pot, especially because we used to have, you know, over $5 million this year. We have 2.5 to distribute. So making it even that much more competitive.
Wow.
Yes.
Is there any way we can incentivize interest to, you
Well,
know?
it's really actually on the county, there's things that the county needs to get done,
Yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, do you want me to do the county needs to get done? Might as
Sure,
well.
yeah.
Then everybody knows where we're at, so they, basically need to have. Where did I write it down?
It's just
Where did I write
the
that?
plat approved.
Yeah, the plat approved, which the
And
county
the
needs to do,
contract
and then they're, because they are part of, they're incorporating this with the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. It has different processes, which has county legal review, and so that can take a while. So they need the final plat approved, and of course, we're struggling with the planning and zoning staff. And then it needs to go to county review, and as long as we can get those two things accomplished, then they feel confident that they can get their end accomplished. But so it's a two-part thing, it's not just
Yeah.
on them,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah, I think that if we, I mean, if the sense from the land trust is that if those two steps that involve county approval can be finished over the next month and a half to 2 months, they can make the last step happen of getting it out to bid and getting the project going. But that's, you know, if you want to talk to your local county planner, you know, encourage them to prioritize this. I think we already have a process in place to try to do that, but I think that's but there are a lot of steps and a lot of players involved, so, and it's a tight timeline, so.
Yeah.
Well, my question was, is there anything we could be doing with the recent grants that will prevent this problem from in the future or support it a little bit? in the
Yeah,
future?
I mean, I think that's part of this next discussion, which
Okay.
is what did we do well this year into the grant process? But also like, we can go beyond just like the application process, right? Like, I think what this next discussion on the agenda basically includes is like helping to put together the bones at least of a document that's like a guidebook for whoever's running this stuff in the future. So they
Exactly,
know that
because
stuff,
it
like
is
they
really
can
hard.
talk to, because it's really like. They need to be communicating, like the county attorney is the one who actually reviews those contracts for the most part, right? But we need to make sure that
The dates are correct on
the
this.
staff knows, the county attorney's office knows, like, that everybody has a sort of a resource that tells them like, hey, you don't have to, you have 2 years, but if we spend 2 years on the RCOG, we're making ourselves wait every 3 years instead of every 2 years to apply.
But see, these type of things, like without staff, because we don't have any staff right now, and I know hopefully we're getting them. But we do need to write the handbook, because like you said, if you weren't here, like, we've all come to different terms, these things are multi-year deals.
Yeah.
And so there are gonna be different board members. And so if you say, hey, did you guys watch this from start to finish? Half the people are always gonna be like, no.
Yeah.
Cause they weren't there. But if they have really clear rules, and this goes for the TCAP as well, and a lot bigger deal on that side, that I think there's a lot of things that you're totally relying on staff to tell you that you're doing the right thing and you're doing it the right way. And if the staff has been there a long time and gets it all and has seen some of these problems in the past, great, but we don't have consistent staff either.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important that we try to do the like high level one pager. This is what you need to do. And as if we're gonna review how we've done in the past, making that list of, things that we could have been smarter about is gonna be really important and be a big service to whoever this is and whoever we hire, whoever the staff's gonna be.
And whoever the next hire is
I
after
think
that.
Yeah,
right?
That's really important, honestly. I would just say from my experience, I have seen several of my other counties who have sub-grant programs who have had major changes at the administrative level, that it has been extremely difficult to pass on that process if it's not, if the new team coming on isn't aware of how it was
And as a
previously,
board
so,
member, as a volunteer board member,
yeah.
and you're being asked to vote for things, and you wanna make sure that you are, keeping, if we're trying to keep if our job is to oversee the ducks, we need to know how the ducks are supposed to be formed. And so, anyway, yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and because this committee is so high functioning and so professional, I think that we have a chance of writing something like that in the next little bit, and having that going forward as the sort of guiding document for how the committee works. And if the commission changes the rules, we can change the document, but for the moment, we have to, at least we would know now.
Yeah, I think
So anything else on just the update on that RCOG stuff before, because that's precisely the next conversation, is actually getting into that, and I want to take a lot of notes from this conversation so we can basically just start writing the document. We ready to move on? Okay, so I'm gonna ask Melissa to help me facilitate this one because I want to take a ton of notes on this. But yeah, I mean, basically, we want to look back at what we did this year in terms of this bigger, more open application process for sub-grant program. Look at what we did well, look at what we want to improve, and think about how we want to institutionalize, that knowledge. So that we, for example, don't have these that RCOG problem again. But also I think we did an awesome job this year, personally, with the grant process, and I think there are things that we can improve, but I think that just making sure we institutionalize some of what we sort of did well is a big part of that process too. So Melissa, take it away.
Yay. So some of the stuff that Chris wanted to cover, which I second, I think is great, is sort of what went well with the new process. This was the first year we ever had a process. We sort of, were able to push it through last minute, and having it be fresh is the best time to do a postmortem. So just conducting that postmortem, what went well, that we kind of want to take and institutionalize. What do we want to improve? And then what could simplify or streamline so that we could gather some efficiencies or things that we never want to do it again. So I don't know what process that we want to use to be able to give that feedback. I think sometimes one tool that can be a little bit useful is to give something a score. So maybe 1 to 10, I give the process a 5 because of these things that I thought went really well. But in order to make it a 10, here's what it would have to do differently. Using a divider, that might be helpful, or if we just want to start throwing out feedback and Chris can start documenting.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to think quite linearly.
I think something that was discussed multiple times throughout the process was if we were going to include nonprofits in the outcome. So I think that's something that you guys want to chat with. Would that be a piece?
Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
you throw out is a piece.
Yeah, I think
whatever
that's a
anyone
piece
has.
of it as a conversation that came up a couple times, and so I think that's something for you guys to all discuss. Cause I imagine this document will go before the commission after you guys got the processes in place, maybe. So I think that would be something to discuss. No.
Love it. Okay. It's been tossed out. Does anyone have any comments about that?
About, I guess I'm confused, to include nonprofits or to only include nonprofits? What are you talking about?
Well, so we had 52 applicants, so, and some of them are nonprofits, and I know as you guys went through the deliberations, it was like, well, should we be including nonprofits? I know that there's been, even from the, governor's office, they said the same thing, there's some areas in the state that don't allow nonprofits to apply for the rural community grants, because they, in the past, I won't say today, but have had lots of opportunities to get funding in different ways, and so using this is like, so.
Is
So that's like
Jasmine
something
here?
Jasmine is
Yeah,
always,
Jasmine brought.
she sent us a couple of notes because she couldn't make it today.
Mhm.
But that wasn't one of them, but we do know just from previous conversations, her opinion is that it should be private sector focused.
I'm with Jasmine on that one.
I have a purist opinion that may be really, really unpopular, so I'm really excited to hear how unpopular it would be. But I'm a purist. To me, if we already have guidance from GOEA that says it's an economic development grant and it's to accomplish one of these three things, so workforce service development, whatever. To me, I'm less concerned about the organization or the institution who's the recipient or putting it forward. I'm more interested in what's the impact that we believe with an evaluation is the most impactful on our economy, or more strategically aligned with where it is that we're going. And I think it could be, for me, any or all of those different things. But I'm more interested in what's the level of impact that we can expect to see in one of those three categories than I am about who's doing the work.
I think that's valid as well.
I think that's valid, especially with the EMS thing, because
They're
if
not a
that could have
nonprofit.
been. Well, if they're not a nonprofit,
Well, they're not a private business.
They're a county entity, right? COG has to be county.
I think our COG is a little different. We should separate our CG and our COG for these
Okay.
conversations because of that, but.
Well, here's the thing, and I was trying to express this, during the process a little bit, and that, look, giving money to private businesses and picking winners and losers is very difficult. And certainly when you say, I'm gonna give money to your former competition because they applied and you didn't hear about it, or whatever, like there's this idea of giving money to a private business when it's the only one of ours in town, it's easy, it's easy, but there is some weirdness of how how that works. And also, so one of the things that we were looking at is this grant that we're giving to a private business, does it have any type of multiplier?
Yeah.
Is it just, okay, that business is gonna be healthier and maybe they'll hire one more person? Or like the beer garden thing, it was all about getting more people to come to the food truck area and being able to use it for events, and it had a multiplier. And so, and I think quite a few of the ones, certainly the
golf course.
the golf course, yeah, and the cafe with the kitchen, what are we calling that again?
The press.
Press.
Thank you, the press,
I think, is it just press?
Press project.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the two names.
that had a multiplier because part of what's happening is nurturing entrepreneurs, food related entrepreneurs. So I feel like, and the fact is, by definition, some nonprofits are set up to help a group of businesses or a group of people. They're not competing with other businesses. So for that reason, I think it would be a little bit harder to achieve those three goals. There might be a nonprofit that comes along that teaches cooking, welding, I don't know, something that we need, landscaping, something, or that has like the youth garden.
Or a
plays
chamber of
special
commerce.
role. What?
Or a chamber
the
of
chamber of
commerce.
commerce,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm not saying one way or the other. I was just saying it came up a lot during the conversations. I think that it's more valid to say, what's our criteria? What are we trying to accomplish? Because what we're trying to accomplish as a county, and if they fit in it or they don't fit in it, it's like if they, so.
But embedded in those three things is this assumption that this is gonna have a bigger impact on the community than just one business doing a little bit better.
I think so. I mean, I think whether you're looking for private businesses or nonprofit organizations or other organizations to fund, I mean, we're looking at how can we use this? I mean, $200,000 is not a massive pot of money, right? How can we use this relatively small pot of money to have maximum impact
Right.
on the community, right? It's gonna need to multiply out. It's gonna need to ripple out to do that. It's gonna
Right.
need to fix a problem that's a big bottleneck, or it's gonna need to have an effect that supports lots of other businesses. Like,
Right.
if we just get one employee out of $50,000, like, that's
So
not good
one
enough,
business,
right? Like,
how
that's just
is
not
that
good enough.
helping?
We can do
Yeah,
better than
right,
that with a
right.
small pot of money.
Unless that business is, you know, in limited supply in our community and we really need more
Exactly.
plumbers, then maybe we could justify investing in plumbing. But I think that that's one reason why you wouldn't want to write it in a way that you're eliminating nonprofits. But as far as the chamber goes, the governor's office expects counties to run business summits. And we have to find the funding for that from somewhere, and this program is supposed to be helping with that. So, but that is because the assumption is the business summit is a multiplier. We're trying to bring people in and teach them, give them new ideas, support their
So
business.
does the county typically pay for the business summit?
Yes, in a lot of
Oh.
counties, yeah.
Well, there you go. Hey,
Yeah.
county. Just kidding.
Well,
Yeah, so typically, so
I
like,
said that in the meeting, I said
in
it's
a lot of
like
counties,
comes
you know,
from.
not all counties have a business summit, right? And some have regional summits, and some have summits that are ran by, you know, major corporations that have the funding, right? But a lot of the summits that don't and that need that fiscal support, the county does use RCG funds. So that's something, you know, we told the
Okay.
commission, we told this board that that's a great use of these funds, absolutely.
Just so you know, San Juan County had a business.
Yeah, and so San
I
Juan,
mean, they had one in April and a business summit like April 30th, I think. So
It
they
used to
have
be a
one.
county round business summit and it just went to the chamber like
Yeah.
a couple years ago. So I mean, possibly with the
Yeah.
staff,
I
it
wonder
could come
why
back.
they don't
So
just
this
like
is
do
a
it.
part of like institutional knowledge, first time I heard of it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
I would-
does
I
that
would
go in
say
the handbook?
They
Right.
don't, I mean, we
I-
have
I-
county businesses go to that with some, I'm sorry, she asked me a question. I apologize.
Okay.
and so San Juan County, they actually pull the summit funds from the RCG prior to distributing.
Uh-huh.
You know, so like, you know, that's not an application, obviously it's the county. So,
the
But
chamber
the county
have to
puts it
apply.
together, the chamber doesn't. I mean,
Right.
it was just that a couple years ago, this county
That was the same.
decided
yeah.
to take it out of the county and work in collaboration, but we don't have a
Yeah.
position right now.
And some counties have their chamber do the sub-grant program. Right, so instead of having the board or the county doing that, like Emory County's chamber does the sub-grant program, administers
So just
it.
like, so what you're saying there is the chamber would apply, saying, we want to do this sub-grant program. All the money goes to the chamber and then the chamber kicks it
It'd be
out.
more like the county.
The
partners
county
with
tell-
the
yes.
Chamber to.
Yeah,
We, at the county,
program.
well,
The
I
chamber-
know
It's a
Forrest
lot.
also had his hand up here, so let's get him involved in the conversation.
So
Oh,
Forrest?
you guys were doing great, though. You guys were doing great. Just a couple of thoughts. First of all, I think the distinction between private enterprise and not-for-profits is it's an artificial way to decide who's eligible and who's not, especially in our county where the nonprofits that are serving people that aren't served by others, that aren't served by the public social services, are providing really valuable and important services to help this community's economic well-being as well as its social well-being. So I think that, and of course, all nonprofits, that's just a tax status and it's certainly not a business model. So I think that distinction is somewhat artificial in the context of this conversation. What I think is really important, and it's what we've tried to do in the past, and that is to focus on impact, as Melissa said, which is hard to quantify. And especially when for the RCG, you're only talking about 200K. And I think this board has been smart in evaluating some of the projects for that. We saw in the 53 or 59 applications, a lot of those projects were requesting basically money to hire staff, which is essentially a one-off, unless it can document the way that one hire will generate sufficient revenue, not only to embed that and make that hire permanent, but also to increase the business's output and therefore income. So I think that as Melanie said, focusing on the goals that we're trying to accomplish that this board has articulated, what the goals are, and using estimated or projected impact as a second form of criteria is the way to look at the future of this program. And from the benefit we have is that as long as the RCG program exists and is funded, it gives us an opportunity in this county to adjust to current needs or near-term needs that we perceive as we consider projects that are brought to this board or recommended by the commission.
Thanks, Forrest. Yeah, I mean, I would just follow on to that, just to say, and this, had a comment from Jasmine in a similar direction, that this is one of the reasons why an update to the general plan would be really useful, or like a strategic planning document for economic development in the county would be really useful, is because if we want to measure, impact, we need to know what impact we want to have. We need to have articulated very clearly what impact we want to have. And I think that we did a great job of like using our common sense and like knowledge of the local economy to measure impact in the absence of something like that really this year. But I think going forward, it would be really useful. Like I tend to lean towards that, say like, it's not about what tax status you have. It's about what impact your project will have on the Grant County economy. But to do that, we need to be able to say like, towards what goals?
Yes,
Like,
exactly. I mean, and the MTAP has the same problem. If you don't have a strategic plan, what are you really measuring against? It's such just like straight up growth or something. And so I think that's super important, that doing that strategic planning at the commission level, if we change the general plan and updated that to talk a little bit more deeply about how our economy works and what kinds of things we really need. And there's agreement on a strategic plan, or at least a broad-based strategic plan. It just helps everyone so much, because literally we also had too many applicants. I mean, if we were able to explain our parameters, right, of what the multiplier really is about, or what the goals are, or what the strategic plan of the county is, and your project needs to fit into that strategic plan some way, it would make it's not just like any business, any type.
But I like that you said that, but I disagree with we had too many applicants, because in the past, how many applicants did we have?
Sure.
So I think when we're going back to what worked and what didn't and what we like, my opinion would be, we at least had a process. The document that was sent to the applicants, I liked the questions about like, what impact is this gonna have and what are we doing? So I thought that was fantastic. Now, granted, it was a lot of applicants, but to me, it is such a giant win compared to the past few years.
So having open application process, call for applications, all of that.
And
right?
going forward, I think
agree.
if we had like an open house about it, like we just invited people to say, come and ask us questions, because if it makes sense for you to apply, you can get your questions out of the way with some of us to be able to kind of make that make sense. But I agree with Ashley when it comes to we need to have some sort of like planning process of like, what are we trying to move towards?
And I just mean, like, if there were applications that we got that we eliminated right off the bat, like this doesn't fit, then it's not quite fair to have had that person go through the process.
Which I think we did do that, did we not?
I don't think there were too many. There were a few that were pretty kind of far outside, I thought.
Okay.
Well, one way that could look in the future is just something like the county has, decided to prioritize these sectors, for the coming years or something like that. If your project fits within these categories, it will receive, extra consideration or something simple like that, it doesn't have to be like, we will not accept your application if, like, I think we want it to be, and we've received suggestion from the commission, I think too. We want an open process, right? And I think that was one of the strengths also. I agree with you about that, Brittany, but one of the strengths this year, we don't want to lose that. But maybe we can think of it more as like, how can we be efficient in the application process, even with an open process too? I don't know, Aaron?
What I saw, as the newcomer in here, people that asked me, I was like, the applicants, I was like, go look at the Trail to Tomorrow plan, which I know we haven't finished. You know, do we want to, cause I'm seeing like, okay, what do we wanna do in the future? Do we want to distill that Trail to Tomorrow to a one-page thing? Like, these are, cause you know, no one wants to read 80 pages of plans. I mean, I did, but like your applicant's not going
Nobody
to.
else does.
And be like, how do we want to use that? I mean, we have the general plan should be that strategic develop, or the Trail to Tomorrow
In distilled form. right?
in distilled form to give that. That's, to me, I'm like, oh, we've got it all. We've talked about this. And because that Trail Tomorrow has nonprofits, it has all our goals, kind of like you guys have
It
fleshed.
tries to talk, I mean, the purpose of that document, and this is the kind of work I've done for other communities, is you're trying to give them some basic, tenets that are really important to their economy. Like, for example, we kind of need public land. It's a thing, like, it's gonna be hard to run the Moab economy without public land. So, and other pieces of it that are unique to your community. And that's exactly what this committee was doing. We were starting to distill Trails to Tomorrow down to a much smaller document that would go before the commission. And if they said, no, we don't care about public land or whatever, they
That
would
distilled
change it.
documents, the handout.
The distilled document we haven't been able to produce, partly because we lost our staff. And partly because we realized we had to leap immediately into this grant, giving progress for.
On my calendar.
I mean,
Yeah.
For next month to try to,
AI and
then that we
stuff,
can
you
start
could just
reviewing.
put that plan in and have it. I mean, seriously, it could
You're
be a
right, to
minute.
certain extent.
The other thing that I was gonna see is, you know, it seems with this institutional knowledge, that subcommittee did all the lifting. And I'm like, oh, if you guys left tomorrow and, you know, me and you were still on the board. I wasn't. were
Brittany
you
was a part of
involved?
it. Brittany was a part of it.
Okay, yeah. He asked me, the other newest person, like, oh, what did you guys do? Like, cause that was totally, that's like what you guys did was.
I
like,
saved
I saw a
every
lot
piece
of
of
words.
it.
Okay.
I saved every piece of it that came my way. I have it. I'm looking at the grant pre-application Google form right now.
Okay,
You know, as far as what's on there, one of the things that I saw as well with it is when I was going through the applications is, you know, creating jobs. We want jobs that we don't have, we don't have housing, which is like, you know, go back. So I think in the next couple of years, creating job needs to be like on the lowest priority, you know, as far, you know, maybe, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there for you
No,
guys,
for-
but I'm just
for
like,
that,
you know.
Well,
that's
but
a
if you
piece
go
of it,
back
like,
to the state document, I think it talks about that. Doesn't it? Doesn't
Well,
it
it's like
say?
one of the 10.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I
we don't
yeah.
need to put that in that, you know, it needs to be
It's
like,
up to you to.
your ranking
really-
is really low on creating jobs, it's more on creating tax-based revenue or whatever it is. I mean, so I think that's what
Right.
you guys really need to dial down is what's your like main top three
right,
areas
right.
I
of
agree.
like, what do we want to accomplish? And these are the top three, like, this is what's gonna move the needle in our community, and this is what we wanna focus on, and so if like you judge them all against those three things, and creating jobs is not in those top
We
three.
want the
It
jobs.
can
we have-
happen with
We
them,
want the jobs we have to pay more.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
it can happen with them, but it just needs to be, I think your criteria.
But like the meeting before we go through all that to make the handout to give to people may need like that, right? Like, oh, hey, what's our top three priorities? It sounds like that would be a good step in our
And that's
handbook.
where, to me, there's like an option, and what I didn't really until this year understand that this is how other counties did this a lot, but. Other counties oftentimes would go to the commission and have a sub-grant program authorized before we start taking applications or anything like that. So it would work sort of in a different direction, like than the way we ran it this year, which was, we just kind of like ran an application process based on how it's been done in the past, what we sort of, the guidance we think we received from the commission, things like that. And then it went to the commission to get approved, right? I think a lot of places do it differently, where they actually work with the commission to authorize or ask the board to run a sub-grant program for X amount of dollars, which doesn't have to be the entire $200,000, and can have attached to it like specific goals that the commission wants to accomplish that year, which obviously I think ought to come from some sort of strategic plan, but it could be like, years 1 to 3, we're working on these things, then years 3 to 6 of the strategic plan, we're working on other things, like. But it's an interesting way to try to do it, because to me, that might open up a different way to have a conversation with commissioners about what we're trying to accomplish and making sure that we're all on the same page about the goals for the program for each year.
And I'm just gonna, I know. So just other examples, and I'm also happy for any of the other counties to do this. I'm so happy to link you up with any of them and learn how their programs run, and maybe you can, you know, pick and choose some ideas from theirs. But you know, then there's also the option, like, if something major happens like flooding, right? Maybe then that following year, your sub grants go to businesses that were impacted by flooding, or if there's major events or things like that, or facade grants. Say, you know, Main Street is a big priority for the commission, and so that year the grants go to Main Street businesses, or maybe you know, certain industries, things like that. So just to like narrow it down, that's another
I think that's
example
a
I've
really good
seen
point.
throughout the state.
Yeah, that's something that we should think about, like, what is the most pressing problem? What are the things that we could do? And then it wouldn't be just saying, hey, everybody, who needs money for their business? Because everyone needs money for their business. So it would be a little narrowed down, and then we wouldn't, we want lots of applicants, but if you know, if some of them fall outside the parameters, we could do a little better job telling them in advance, these are the parameters. And you could say, we want to fluff up Main Street, but if we have money left over, we'll consider X, Y, and you can still apply or whatever. But I
Or you
think
want to
that
support-
priority process is about the most valuable thing this committee could do. I mean, yes, we have to give the money away, but if this committee helps the community have a conversation about what is the biggest economic development priority, and we could get some stakeholder buy-in on that, that would be really amazing, because what I see is the communities that do have a more unified view of what they want to get done, and they're not like this, they're moving down the road.
Melody, what do you think about the like order of how a sub-grant program gets run? Like, I mean, basically, do you think that in Grant County it would make sense to go to, basically, I think timeline, what that would look like is like, would be in the fall, probably. We would go to the commission and say, how much do you guys want to authorize in the sub-grant program? And what priorities do we, you know, there'd be some sort of, I don't know, maybe we'd make recommendations on priorities, and then you guys would approve them, or I don't know exactly what it would look like, and you can maybe jump in with how other counties do that. I just mean as an example, but.
Dollar on it, because like with this year, we didn't know, I mean, if I said, oh, if the commission said, okay, well, we're gonna put $50,000 to sub grants. You know, and then you have applications come in and like it gets rid of some or whatever, you know, I don't.
It would
mean,
just be
I
like if
thought
you
the
guys
process
wanted
that
to
you guys did
hold it.
was really great.
Okay.
I think I think all the processes were good. I mean, Melissa was like living it and going through spreadsheets and all that stuff, so I don't know if maybe she knows how to streamline a better process as far as like dispersing the data or collecting the data. But like the information that you collected, I just think that the biggest thing would just be selecting those. And so if you wanna just put a pin in it and go back to the bad thing about the master plan is that that's gonna have to go before planning and zoning. I mean, it just goes to them. That's just the process of it. If you guys wanna take the trails tomorrow, compact it and stick it in our general plan, that goes to planning and zoning. So I mean, there's still a lot of processes that are gonna happen there.
Sure.
I don't think that needs to be finished and completed for you guys to continue on what you wanna do at the moment. You say, we're working on this, we're gonna pass it off to them. Maybe it'll get passed off at some point in time, but you still work off that idea. You know, in that time frame, you work
Sure.
off that. I mean, no one was here to tell you, except for, you know, me, but you know, to tell you where you need to go, the direction that you wanna go with it. So I think if we come up with those priorities, work from those priorities for next year, work on the general plan that you've been working on. I mean, all that's gonna be working on this. And I think, like I said, the processes, if that's what you guys wanna focus on for this conversation today, I think that they went really well. I think that Melissa probably learned a lot too, so.
So what's the commission win? So like, when I was going through that, when I was kind of reading some of the stuff in the state, it was like, if we generate revenue here, we obviously all win type of deal. So if the commission had like a agenda item where they were like, well, this is our concerns, or these are what we want to see. Like I saw TCAB the other day talk about what their scoreboard was gonna look like, about like how they're gonna measure if they're doing well or not with the money that they're spending. So I guess what I'm trying to understand, are we looking at a revenue standpoint, or what's the tail factor?
I mean, to me, it's
Did we
bigger
win,
than
did we
just
not
that
win?
personally. I mean, I think this is something that we should discuss a little bit as a part of that, as a part of that general plan or strategic plan conversation that we'll have, I think, for part of the rest of the year. We'll have probably a couple of conversations about that. To me, it's not just about revenue, like improving our economy, creating economic opportunity in Grant County means more than tax revenue, right? To me, it means things like making sure that people have enough to eat, not by putting food on their table, but by making sure they have access to a job that will allow them to both pay rent and buy food, right? Like, so quality of jobs is what I guess I'm getting at there. I think it looks like, tackling bottlenecks in our economy that we know are major problems. So identifying some things like affordable housing is one that's been identified very clearly. So I think you can have wins in the economy there that might not have much to do with, sales tax revenue. So I don't know. I think that there are multiple metrics. And I think it's worthy of some conversation on our part. And then I'd love to, that kind of be like, I'd love to, I want the commission to be a part of that, but I don't want to just say, hey, commission, what's your goal? Right? I want us to say to them like, hey, this is what, after a deep think about what the goals are for our grants and for how we measure economic success in Grant County improvements. These are things that we think should be taken into account. Please tell us what you think as well, so that we can find like, something we all agree on, a consensus.
That's how I feel should go too. I mean, that's why this board exists. It's an advisory board. You're here to do the think tank work and present it to the commission, and then they could tweak it a little bit, not the him giving you like, this is how it's gonna be, why would we even have advisory boards, I mean, except that we have to have it for the state thing, but as far as the strategic plan, why would we even let it get talked about or whatever? So I think that's right, don't necessarily, I mean, we all live in this community, and that's why you're all here, is to take all the information in and to make a plan with what you want to use.
Well, the chamber at the summit, we are looking at some facilitated sessions, because a big part of what we want to happen at this summit is more input from the community and the businesses. It's not, we're gonna have some talking heads that are really good at talking, have a lot of good stuff to say, but we also want to have these breakout sessions where there's a lot more community input. So it's hard when you ask it generally. I found those aren't that productive. What do you think? But if you say, here are some things that have come up, and we get beyond just housing or job creation or the kind of classic ones, and bring up a few and get the feedback from the people attending the business summit, that could come back to this committee, and then the committee could think about that, and then it could go. So there could be a public input part of this that could probably be helpful as well. Lisa?
I was just gonna say too, like, Aaron brought up institutional knowledge, and I think that's really, really good, because as far as the process goes, from my understanding, we've got a huge spectrum. And on one side of it, in terms of subgrants, we could go all the way to, hey, we want to partner with the chamber, and the chamber can administrate subgrants or whatever. But to what Melody was saying earlier about a business summit or the county, we could go the other part of the extreme, which is the county knows what its objectives are and it maintains those RCG funds. And then as part of what they want to accomplish, they could put out an RFP process to say what organization or our community wants to do this work to complete our objective on our behalf that we're going to fund and pay for out of our use of those RCG funds. Do you know what I'm saying? So we've gone through, these are all of the 20 different ways that we could do a subgrant program. The opposite of that is we could say the county has these strategic objectives, and the best way to do that is this one thing. And the county's responsible for doing that one thing and doesn't do any subgrants to anyone, and then may have an RFP process to say what sort of organizations can accomplish this work for us on our behalf. So I do think it can run, is that correct? Like, it can go from the county making those decisions and having that strategy, and acting on those funds, all the way to, we could have 30 different people as subgrantees.
I mean, could
Yeah.
I mean, our number one barrier to economic development in this community is housing. We've all recognized that. Would an economic would the RC, could the county take the RCG and put it toward affordable housing?
How does that?
So technically, yes. I think it
throwing a
would
question
be
out there.
hesitant for Grant County just because so much GOEO funding has already gone to affordable housing. You know, so I
Yeah.
think that would be a conversation just
So I guess it
because,
has, yeah, like
so-
the.
yeah, they've
RCG has
gotten
it.
several
Other
GOEO
communities don't.
grants,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So I think that,
well, it's only $200,000 too.
well, there's been RCOG that's
Yeah.
gone to them and some other grants
Yeah.
as well.
And-
So I think if, you know, almost $1 million hadn't
So
already
we're
gone
already
to them.
moving along that, we're already moving that,
Yeah.
that needle with.
But I mean, like, so some counties don't even do sub-grant programs, right? They use RCG funds for staff. They use RCG funds for trainings, for sending their CEO boards to
Oh, they're on
conferences and, you know what I mean? Like, and so, I mean, yeah, the possibilities are endless, and that's something, you know, is the commission planning on moving forward with the sub-grant program continuously in future years, you know? I think that that might be a good place to start. And then, you know, obviously developing the program. And like Chris said, not all counties give all $200,000 either. San Juan County's fluctuates year to year, but like Hardin County, 100% of it goes to the sub-grant program every single year. They have the same criteria, the same scoring rubric, everything. So
I feel like
it's up to
the
you,
commission
yeah.
is very happy with everything
Yeah.
that happened this year. I mean, if I was going to take a poll of them and say, you know, what do you guys want? I would say that they would want to continue with what you guys did this last year. You
What
know,
was their
getting the-
top thing? Were they excited that there was a lot of applicants? Did they like the,
They excited
I
that the
guess
word
the
got
mix
out,
of
that
how
people
many people?
knew that there was a lot of applicants. You know, they were happy with the overall recommendation.
I think what we
I
were
think
asked
that-
to do at some of the commission meetings was to have an open process, open to the public. That was advertised, the public was aware of it, and that there was a fair
Shake.
way to measure
Yeah.
things, right?
I
And
feel
that
like
was
we
what
were
I
able
took
to do all
from
those things this year.
commissioners'
And
comments,
so-
so that's what they wanted, and I think we did that.
Yeah, and it'll change. I mean, the commission's gonna change, just like this board's gonna change, and so, but as of right at this moment in time, I think that the direction that you guys are going, that you went is fantastic, and to continue that for next year's plan, you know, but fix whatever needs to be fixed, or make your top three things as far as your criteria goes, and then in 2 years from now, I might come back to you with a whole nother story. Whoever else is on the commission, you know, so, but at the moment, I don't think that the commission has the bandwidth to tell you what to do, to tell you guys what they want. I mean, I really don't. I think that there's a lot going on, and so I think you guys did a fantastic job, and everyone's really happy with it.
Well, let's go back to, sorry. Well, I was just gonna say.
But Aaron and
Go back to
Lisa are
how
also
to-
looking at.
Going back to how you actually make the decisions, and some of the questions that I had that we didn't ask them had to do a little bit with longer term business planning. And I don't know if that's asking too much, but that was a few of them, I'm like, well, this sounds pretty good, but what's the next, like, what's their longer term view, but. I don't
So
know.
what do you think of, like, I'd love to dig into that just a little bit, because that is I mean, I think that's an important thing, it's like thinking about the materials that we actually put out to people and what questions we did ask and maybe what questions we should have asked. So, I mean, I think I understand what your point is kind of just like, especially for the private businesses, like, this fits into your broader business plan, how? Is that
Only
kind of the question?
New startups.
And like, I don't know, to me, I was struggling with, as we were writing those and creating the forms, like, trying to make it very accessible, especially at that original, like, pre-application stage, like not asking people to send us a 20-page document. And then maybe later asking for a little bit more, right? And so maybe that's part of that second
Excellent.
thing.
I mean, I thought what we did there was excellent. There were just a few times, especially with the startup, where like pricing, like how are you gonna price the freeze drying of the food going forward? Is it gonna be sustainable? Like, and some of that we just can't answer, or we should figure out maybe in our maybe we could submit to them some questions before they come to the interview or something. Like, I don't know if we should change the whole process, but maybe there were like, maybe that would be a help, like thinking about, here's the questions I still have about this business that we didn't really ask, but we could ask, but I wouldn't want to put them on the spot in the interview necessarily, like, do math right now.
That's something I considered though, as we were going through it, is like, at the end of that interview day, if there could have been another phase, which was like written questions, like remaining questions, and they wouldn't necessarily have to have gotten any. Maybe we all received the information we had, but I think there is a possibility that we could say, if there's key pieces of information we still need, we can ask for them.
Sure.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if for efficiency, to help us get to next steps, how would you guys feel about if we go back as the subcommittee and document the process, send back out the materials, and in the Google form, everyone can comment about, I would like to add these questions, or I didn't think that this was helpful, or whatever, then we could have that discussion next time. And then the next focus becomes of the next meeting, maybe starting on that strategic approach. So it's kind of like that 1-2 process of, here's the documentation of the process that we would hand to a whole brand new board that's never had experience, and they should take it and run with it. Then everyone can comment in line. And then we can make decisions about how to change from that. And then in parallel, we say, and now we're gonna start having the strategic conversation about what's the most important thing to us in terms of outcome.
And I would love to get you some handbooks from some other counties, if that would be helpful for you to look at their programs and some of their procedures and policies and criteria.
That would be
If that would help,
very
And San Juan has it.
just to see, yeah.
Well, Carbon has a matrix and they're doing.
Yeah,
it.
Carbon is like, that's Shani Wilson is amazing, and that she's really the one that I kind of sent to everybody else who's developing their program.
cool.
San Juan County just had to revamp theirs because of change, you know. But I would love to get you those handbooks, and you know, maybe you'll have some ideas from those as well.
That'd be
Yeah.
amazing.
That's how I could help.
No, thanks
Okay.
for it. Definitely. I think that makes a
Put
lot of
on my
sense,
list.
Lisa. So we'll try to, and I mean, I think also we can kind of incorporate some of the discussion today in that documentation of like, because it wouldn't just be documentation of the past process, but kind of documentation of like where we're at today
Everything that-
with what we did and what we learned. Just like what we would hand off, and then everybody, we can share it to the group and people can add comments and make suggestions on it, all of that stuff.
Aaron,
When last, we're looking at feedback and stuff, I heard, like, I kind of felt like the timelines were so tight. Like, and I heard from a couple people, just talking to a couple people, they're like, man, if we had another month, like, I think Courtney was like, I never wrote a grant, he was like, just trying to fly that stuff together. It felt like this cycle, I was like, wow, if there was any less time with our scheduling of meetings, things would have been really,
Yeah,
tight.
I think it'll be better about next year, more, because obviously it was already processed, we didn't have a
Yeah,
process in place.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But the handbook's like, you need 3 months to do this properly, or 4 months.
well,
I
like
don't
she
know.
said, San Juan County did a little like, come in and learn about it, if you might be interested, and you can come in.
They had
So maybe
workshops.
advertise it, advertise the grant. And the Google sheet, and then the workshop,
Yeah.
and then the due date,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
that
that's
would
like
be-
an extra month.
Yeah, an extra
Yeah,
month, so you
yeah.
advertise it, you get the sheet out there, and then so people can kind of look at what they're gonna be needing to give you. Then you have the workshop, and then the due date for the original, whatever,
Right.
the pre-application.
and that's all good.
Yeah, that sounds great.
IGRC, you guys did a phenomenal job on such a tight deadline, getting everything in.
And I would say one thing too, is if they don't know what they're doing, especially with business planning, like you were talking about doing long-term business planning, that's really why I'm here. And so if they're getting a grant, they don't know how to fill out paperwork, and you'd be surprised that most people, whether they're a new business or an existing business, they don't have an idea on how to write. That's, we're here to help.
We could offer you
That's what I'm saying
services
is,
to help
You-
that.
what-
Yeah.
Like
We-
even on
we-
with entrepreneurs, the new businesses,
That's what I was
we could
gonna
do a
say.
workshop on how to do that. Because if you're doing projections, whether they're financial projections, cash flow, monthly income statements, or any of those things. Most people don't have a clue what they're doing.
Todd, we'd love to
And
have you join.
30,
the
35, or
workshop.
40 people that I've
Give you a
spoken
bunch
with
of more.
have no idea.
Because they didn't have pricing models.
Well, yeah, but
How do you make
again,
it?
well, one of the things too is if you're looking at your monthly income statements and looking at the financials that they're putting in. On what they need to include with pricing,
Yeah,
what are things going to cost them?
Yeah.
Whether they're gonna make it or they're not gonna make it, or
Right.
have someone else make it for them. And so I'm working with people on how to do all those things. And
That's
so for us, looking at, okay, you're required to do all these things. Well, you know, we're under a strict timeline from what I'm understanding. I haven't gone through the process, but you know, you're getting people that don't have a clue on how to write, whether they may have an existing business, they don't have any idea. And so we're structured in a way where we can help out all businesses. And if I don't know what I'm doing on something, I've got 16 other people in my organization, they do.
Yeah.
And so we're willing to bring other people into our county too to help.
you know what's so cool about that idea is that then, even if you apply and you don't get the grant, got so much out of the process.
Or if you don't fit the criteria, then you just go and visit with Todd.
Well,
You're like,
there's-
yeah, but, and I also think that other people that you brought to that chamber business luncheon at the Mark, when it was the, training.
Oh,
All
yeah,
those other helpers, those
Right.
could all be in the workshop too, because then people can come in and get help from them, and if they don't fit our criteria, then you say, well, we still have some really great resources for
Yeah.
you as well.
We have
So-
other grants, and they may not be as much, like, they may not be a $50,000 grant, but we have other grants that will help them.
sure,
We have grants where they receive money. And we also have grants where they can get training. Where they can actually get paid, they can get paid training for help.
yeah,
So there's things that we can provide for them. But if they don't know what they're doing at the get-go, we're here to help. I'm here to help.
How long would you need to help 52 people? How many months in advance?
Honestly, I could get it done within 2 hours on each one.
What I love
Yeah.
about incorporating you early on in the process too, is I think it helps for successful delivery. If they've got ongoing support, someone that they can be checking in with. It's possible that we're gonna get a lot better delivery, and they're gonna be successful along the way.
yeah.
And it's like setting people up for a longer term success, because I mean, like, we knew already, I mean, some of the folks applying, it's more like. All right, if you work really hard next, like through the year, you could be ready to apply with a successful application next year, right? But being able to not just sort of say that, or like, but to be able to say, and here's some support along the way to help get you guys there.
Well, it's also like, if you're investing in a private business, especially startups, and they can't give you anything about their cost structure, like, what's the gross profit here? Like, is it gonna be, if you don't know, like, if we give you this money and you blow it all making the widgets, and it turns out you have to sell for twice what you thought you were gonna have to sell for, nobody's winning. You know, so,
That's what I said, one of the things too, is like, I've had people come into me where it's gonna cost them for that widget 70 cents to make. But if they have somebody else do it for them, it's gonna cost them 29 cents to make it. And so there's ways for us to help them to get an idea of where are they gonna be able, it's the best bang for the buck for them.
right,
And how are they gonna be successful business wise? And
That-
so
yeah.
that's what we wanna be able to do in our organization, especially with these small businesses. And it
well,
goes,
linking these two things could be super powerful, because I just felt bad for some of the businesses that were pretty. Like, a little bit out of the realm of what we were gonna, and they've done a lot of work, and they were all great ideas, but they needed more. Development for us to even get to the point that we could be confident considering them. Really, so I think this is a great idea, because that way we feel everyone who participated would get something out of it, even if they didn't get the grant.
well, and we do all the finance, like I do, like, over the past months, I've done all financials for a lot of these businesses. Like, they'll give me their annual projection of a number, a number, a number,
Yeah.
and there's a number, a number, number. And so I've got to walk them through. And what I mean is that's their annual projection of what they're gonna make.
They're hoping their dream of what their
Yeah,
revenue.
so I'm gonna make 75 here, I'm gonna make 80 here, I'm gonna make 85. I'm like, well, you've got nothing there.
Yeah,
And so those people they don't know what they're doing, and that's why I'm here. So, and I can help create 3 years of annual financial projections for all of you, what those monthly income statements look like, I mean, all of them. And that
Yeah, I
takes me a day for each person probably.
And then I think for us, the question is still like, how do we, to what extent do we want to ask for that kind of stuff? Like, I mean, it's. I think it's a challenge. I mean, that's not gonna be relevant for every organization, but for. I mean, business,
if
I
we
think it
create
might
that
be,
Workshop I think we have the workshop before their application is due.
Yeah.
The first pre-application, we're gonna have an idea of more what needs to go into that versus what they had this year, you know, and they're also gonna have some help to get that information, you know, or to follow up with some things, so.
yeah, but unless we're, I mean. Are we gonna ask on that initial application for these type of financials from?
No,
I don't think so,
No,
right? I think
but
we're doing it later on.
But they would
if at
add it
all,
if they knew it.
process.
I mean, I think that if they kind of had an idea that they would add it, I mean, I would if I was applying.
Yeah,
Sure.
that might scare away like non-serious people too.
well,
Yeah.
there's that, but
Uh,
there are certain things about,
Some
like,
information is proprietary
Um,
too. I don't know that every business would wanna put their financials out there for the
world.
chance to
I'm
get
not-
$5,000 or
Yeah,
something like
I'm
that,
not
you know what I
asking
mean?
for their financials so
Yeah.
much as their cost structure.
Yeah.
What is the long-term cost structure?
Yeah.
So the freeze-dried food thing, like, what is how much are you gonna charge people to freeze-dry their food?
Yeah.
And how much food do you have to do a day to pay for this thing?
Yeah.
So that was just some basic cost structure stuff. You don't have to turn it into a full-on
Yeah.
financial statement or cash flow.
Well, where do you
report,
think
but-
we should, I mean, I still,
Well, I
I'm
was
like,
thinking the
my thought
second
would
time,
be
like,
after the interview or
do-
during that time period.
App
Yeah.
thing was fine, not too much work for
Yeah.
them, enough for us to kind of see what they were talking about. Then, let's say they submit their apps and we read them, like we did so diligently for hours and hours. And then but I had questions once I read them. And so some of those questions, if I had written them down prior to their interview, and submitted them, and let's say three of us said, what's the cost structure or whatever, then you could have, before their interview, you said, we want to interview you, we're taking you to the next phase. Here are the questions the board is gonna ask you at that interview.
Maybe that would be part of the process here.
And
is
if you
that we
don't know
send
the
back
answer, call Todd.
questions.
Yeah. I
Right,
like
That we send back questions after we get the applications and you go through them and you matrix them like you did. And then you write down those questions and you get them to the chair or the
Right,
person that's
Administering it.
administering, or when hopefully by then we have
A
a
lot of
position.
deliberation around that though, because we did bring up like what we thought were our questions. And then when they came in on their little 7-minute bill, they had their,
but they
But they
didn't
didn't
know our
have questions
questions
from
ahead of
us.
time.
Right.
Well, yeah, they've been prepared. If we
Yeah.
said, could you do a little more math for us, please?
These are the-
It's just giving the board members an opportunity to ask specific questions to a
I
specific,
see.
instead of a standard set of questions, it would be like. I've read your application and now I'd like to ask them a specific question, and then they have the
Like,
opportunity.
when you come to
respond.
present.
I think that makes sense.
When you come to
like-
present, but these are the questions that we'd like you to be prepared to answer in advance. So you're not just asking them to do something right there off of.
Or for some of them,
you
it
know.
might be a written response might be more appropriate, you know? Like, because they only have the 5 minutes or whatever,
Well,
there's
that's
not a
what
ton
they
of time to
can
do it.
Respond.
Exactly,
Like
that's
construct.
what I mean, it's like,
Like,
we
you
can,
got your question
yeah.
How
and
do you do
we can
that?
kind of have both options for both.
Well,
of those
and they
things.
have, Weaver State has a Wildcat Fund micro grant
Yeah.
that's $3,000. And then people know specifically, they have a pitch for 7 minutes, they know specifically what they have to answer.
Well, that's what
And then
we
if you have
did.
questions,
but we have
that's
more.
fine. And so that's what they did.
Yeah, so that's what we did this year, but I think the idea here is that some of the questions that we might want to ask. Aren't something that you can expect somebody to answer in a 30-second or 1 minute
So
response
as
at a
the
meeting.
board is going through the applicants, they would write down the questions that they were curious about, and then they would get them to staff or the chair. And then that staff would send it out to those potential recipients that are coming in for their interview, and they would either bring it in writing or they would answer it during that point in time, but they'd have advanced knowledge, and everyone's gonna be unique. That's the thing, is the question that you're asking is unique to their specific pre-application. So it's not something that we're putting out there in a general form, it's unique to their plan, to their thing, and they're not prepared to answer that when they just come in here.
They
You know,
might
so
not
if
be,
you
and
can
we
get it
don't
in
wanna do
advance.
that. Are you worried about that in a public meeting, like giving away proprietary information? Like if we ask a really specific question, is that what you're? Sort of, maybe?
No, it just seemed, to me, it just seemed a little like haphazard, you know, it was like, I kind of was like, oh. Does that go like on vibes, or like, what are you doing, is it, you know?
Well, the questions I thought of were specifically, have you thought about the long term here?
Yeah,
And have you done much math on the long term? And if you have, we'd love to see it.
right,
And,
that's,
and even if someone said to me, we're gonna run a 45% cost of goods sold. And we've checked it and that's what we're gonna run and it's gonna be fine. We're confident in that. And that's gonna throw enough overhead so that we can pay for our building or whatever their problems. So like, even if they just said that, that would be more information than we had before. Like just that, like, we don't wanna invest in something that's gonna fail. It's not good for them, it's not good for us. And so really, there's a few questions that if the person hasn't really thought about how they're gonna generate revenue, or they've just like, they're so excited about their thing, their widget, and they haven't really thought about how much it's gonna cost them and what are the, cost, like, I'm obsessed with cost accounting. How much does it cost you to produce the thing versus your overhead? So what are your fixed costs versus your variable costs, right? And so few accountants give small businesses that information. So if you're helping with them that,
Well,
that's a huge.
a lot, and a lot of them, when I talk to accountants, they don't do that.
Like, right, all they care about is taxes.
Like even Lonnie will not do that.
Right.
Like you could go to a bank, you want a bank loan, they're not gonna give you any counsel. They're gonna look at your business plan.
And see if it's.
We give counseling, that's what we do, that's what I do, I give counseling to them on whether or not it's beneficial for them to, like you said, looking at the cost analysis on what that, whether it's a fixed or a variable, what that looks like.
Right.
Now, they're not gonna necessarily do that because they've got so many people they're working. I do too, but I'm free to them to be able to do that for them and give them counseling.
Lisa?
So I love the idea. Now I'm even more sold than ever about integrating and working really closely with you from the SBDC side, because I'm gonna raise a cautionary flag that I don't love. I'm a cost accounting junkie because I've always had international supply chains. So for me, cost accounting is really important. As far as the grant process goes, every grant that I've ever had exposure to asks you for your budget specific to the grant, your narrative specific to the grant, and then your objectives and your deliverables. I don't want to get in someone's financials, and I don't think people are going to be willing to share detailed financials for this type of a grant. I would love to work with you to say, what's your level of confidence? Like, we have concerns about their cost accounting structure. We have some real concerns about their supply chain and their ability to deliver. What's your sense of that? And I would feel a lot more comfortable getting that kind of information from you after you have dived into that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we want to start evaluating people's health of their business. I don't know how interested we are in evaluating the fiscal health.
I'm
of
not
your
sure that
company.
you want a business
I don't
counselor to
think you
take
want
on that
to.
role either.
Well, I mean, if they're going to him and they're saying to him, hey, one of our biggest challenges is.
Yeah, but I'm
cost
not gonna
accounting
go to
or-
him if he's gonna tell them that I've got bad financials.
No, no,
You want
what-
somebody that you're gonna
Well, I
get
would
counsel
say
from
too,
to
though, we
like.
gotta remember too, this is not a loan, this is a grant.
Yeah.
And so, I know, understand what you're saying, I completely agree with that, and.
I just don't
we have
want to
to
get
look at
really
that,
detailed,
but
because
getting
I don't
so
think they'll
detailed,
share.
and I'm talking detailed on, in a loan sense. Like, we have the revolving
That's
loan
different.
fund, and I know that we work with that with the county, but that's different.
Mhm.
This grant is different, but at least giving them an idea of, whether their product or their widget or whatever you're looking at will
Be profitable.
be profitable. for them.
Basically.
That's, I'm just talking about the counseling point. I'm not talking about them not being able to go out and get that grant and try to get the grant.
Well, I think we've got time to think about this. I mean, I think what we hear is that it's for certain businesses, it would be helpful to have a little bit more information on the viability of the business. And I think we'll try to figure out a way to put that into the process for the next year. Yeah.
One of the other things that I would like to see maybe, and you guys can totally disagree with me, but I wouldn't mind even if we like carved off $10,000 and it was for a startup or maybe a younger person that wants to stay in Moab. Because I do think, not college isn't for everyone, but there are a lot of, things that we need here. Landscaping, I go back to that landscaping thing all the time because I saw a cute little Swayze today trying to do a yard. But anyway, so if that person says, you know what, college isn't for me, or I'm gonna take a gap year or whatever, and I'm gonna see if I can start this business, it would be really cool if the county could get behind. If it's just a small, like you talked about a micro grant, but like something small that's like, maybe we say, we're gonna help you advertise, and this is a piece of equipment that's gonna get you rolling on your paint business or on your, do you see what I'm saying? So, I would like to see something like that come from this grant.
Brittany, do you know about this? Like, hasn't there been sort of like a high school Shark Tank or something like that?
Yeah.
No, you guys would know more.
Yeah, with Kate and Black, there's a high school Shark Tank where they'll give a certain amount of money. like 1,500, 1,000 and 500. But if you're talking about 10,000, like a $10,000 grant, I think that would be beneficial to them, and I think carving that out, in my opinion, would be really
I mean, it
good.
could potentially be recommended
It's a
to them to
small
apply for
investment.
5,000 from
Well,
us.
even if you were to sit there and say, okay, go to,
Mega prize or
well,
something.
you go to
for the
him and say,
process
look,
already
we
there.
wanna be able to give this, and if you've ever been in there, and I would advise you to go. Where they do have a Shark Tank to look at what he does. Caden Black is fantastic, and the kids are amazing.
Does he,
with the-
does he work at the high school?
Yeah, he's in charge of DECA, which is the business
On my list.
club. You really need to
Well,
go.
we
If
should
you haven't
contact, we
been,
should have him join us.
it's fantastic and phenomenal. I'll actually talk to him about it too. To where if you went in and looked, it's some of their ideas, it's
Yeah,
pretty
sounds
amazing.
like cool
And
program.
this is one of the chamber initiatives, is we want business people to start helping the students earlier in their journey. And we're meeting with the superintendent at some point to start to figure out how do we bring more, it's on our list to really to support that. It's amazing.
I think it's a small investment for us to maybe have that impact and that multiplier effect. And then also, if they're typically a student, they have a place to live already, they have, you know what I mean, and maybe they get rolling on some sort of something that
I would
gives
just
them that
almost
push.
like, I really love the idea. I would just almost rather like have us be supporting a program that's doing, like, I mean, if we can't, right, then we just, I guess, put it in. But if there's something that we could tap into.
I even think too, that if you sit there and say, okay, well, we're gonna give first place this, second place this, and third place this on a grant.
Yeah, cause $1,000 and $500 doesn't do much to get a business started, so if we just use Caden's already proven established thing and just be like, oh, but we're gonna supplement $7,000 so they can give, 3,000, 2,000, and 1,000 or whatever.
And maybe it's a senior or something, and then at the end of the year, they have the senior awards night, we can present that, we look cool, and the county is really coming through for some of these younger.
And the winners should all get like a business counselor provided by the chamber that's like a mentor organization.
Some of
And
these-
they, like, that's what I mean about like creating a package, is like, they should all go to as a requirement, they should all have to go to SBDC and write a business plan with Todd, like.
Right.
Just like something that provides more comprehensive
Yeah,
support, like
that's-
bringing together resources would be really.
Because if we just give them money without advice, it's gonna be, we really need to be giving them, and.
But we can put that together.
Yeah, so
I
they-
think
I
that's
think
what
if
we're
we
talking
like pull
about,
together some
and
of these
start to
threads. we
look
can
at,
put that
and
out.
not only that, like, take this course at USU.
So say we could do a waiver for like a bookkeeping,
Yeah.
a bookkeeping certificate or something.
Exactly. And so
I love that.
this is on the chamber's strategic plan, actually, is to get to work on a student to workforce pathway that is viable and helpful, so.
I would even say going to you too, at USU.
Yeah.
Giving them that opportunity, even though they want to do something business wise, but giving them opportunity to take courses that they may be interested at USU Moab. They're gonna stay here anyway, and that
Well,
would be.
they may not know that they need to be interested in the county.
Well, that's what I was just about to say, because I mean, if they're not wanting to go to school, they're not wanting to go to school, and we're trying to avoid, that's what, my whole point with a lot of my argument with a $10,000 startup business for a young person or whatever, I don't know what the parameters could be. The whole point is they don't want to go to school, but they are hard workers, and that's what they're looking for, to keep and stay and then make families here.
But
That's
if they
fine.
just had to go to one class to get this grant, like if we just required them to go to, and USU waived the fee for the bookkeeping course. And we required them to go to the SSBDC and create a business plan and take this bookkeeping course and get $5,000.
That would be part of their contract.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
then we're helping them in so many ways, and yeah, they're not going to school, but they have to learn some stuff.
It's on the list.
They have to learn stuff
Well,
to
they
run a
could,
business.
they could have a period of time, I don't know for this grant, like if they'd have to use it within that year, but. What we see at USU is a lot of these students come, they wanna do something, but they, right out of high school, they're like, I don't wanna go to school, so if they had a window of opportunity to use that. Where they had the time to realize like, yeah, I do need that, and we held that waiver for them up there, cause we could do that too,
Well, they've gotta learn how to
guarantee it for a
create the
period of
business
time
too.
there.
But they
Like
can also just-
what, Like, what type of business are they gonna create? We focus on LLCs, and so what we do is we would help them create their business as
Yeah.
well outside of church.
Right.
And then that way they know how to run their business, they know where to put the money.
Yeah.
And then how to use that money. So just handing them $7,000 and then putting it into their personal bank account. No, that's a big no-no. So what I'm saying though is those kids, us assuming that they know how to create a business and how to run that business correctly, how to run everything through their limited liability corporation. We help them do that. And so that way they know outside of the bookkeeping, and when they learn the bookkeeping, it's really important for them to be able to run their business correctly, like you're saying. And being able to, and that's not hard to do because it's a limited amount of time that they're gonna have to learn how to run their business that way.
Let's hold a meeting on this. I think we should bring together, like, we should ask Caden to come to a meeting on this. Chamber, whoever from the
Well,
chamber
give us
should be
just
there,
a
a couple people from SU.
because we're in the process of redoing our whole database, but in the fall, we would love to, like, we're.
Oh, yeah, you're saying you need, the chamber needs a minute to
Chamber
get
needs-
organized. That's what you're saying, okay,
And
yeah.
we would love to convene, that's,
When do you
we're
need to
trying to
pop
be the
this?
convener for all these opportunities and challenges. So we'd love to bring everyone together and then we can think it through a little bit more, but
Yeah.
it's all the way from, what do we call it, Reality Town, which if you haven't seen, it's quite something. And to graduation, and those kids that are saying, well, I don't wanna go to school, it's like, here's why you might wanna go. You know, and here's what, if you could learn these things first, then your landscaping business has a lot better chance of succeeding because you know what your goals are, you know how many lawns you have to mow a month or whatever, like what your numbers need to be. So you can get up there and succeed, which is what we want, so.
Great. I feel like we've got a lot. And I think that we sort of signed up to try to get a couple documents, things ready before our next meeting that we can pass around and get feedback on. So I'm sort of inclined to call it a day and adjourn. Does anybody have any
There's
last
chat.
things?
Is there somebody in the chat?
Did you, I think I saw the chats. Let me double check and make sure they were just letting us know that they had to
Okay.
leave and yeah.
Who's that, Laura?
I don't know who, yeah.
He's just watching. A random friend.
Hey guys, I did take notes during this, and I have like a starter document version of this grants, guidelines thing, including like timelines about when people should apply for sub grants and stuff like that. It's a PDF. If you guys drop an email here, I can just send it, and maybe it is helpful as a starting point for you guys.
Sure, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Everett Hildenbrandt. I'm just, trying to get more involved in things and don't really know where to go, so I just started attending meetings.
Uh-oh, he will.
So you're gonna send them an email in the chat?
Yep.
Yeah, he was, we can forward that.
Awesome.
We all took notes, but he probably took better notes.
Okay, Aaron?
I just have a thing to plug
Yeah.
for, Moab Area Task Force is doing a housing survey. If you've seen this floating around, please fill it out. Then we're going to have a big joint meeting with the county, like we're trying to get anybody and everybody kind of makes housing decisions. I mean, this board is, we've identified housing as such an important thing. I think the housing market is shifted a little bit. Two like examples, neighbor's house has been for sale for 6 months, but my plumbing apprentice is on a 2-year wait list for housing, so. We have a lot, our challenges are still here, they're just changing. So I would just want to hear from you guys, if you're interested, July 30th, we're gonna have that presentation of that survey and all that info going on. Probably at the mark, it's at mark at 6:30, so.
But you wanted people to take the survey?
Yeah,
Could you send out?
yeah, I'll
You can
send
just hit a
you-
reply all on that chain
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
I saw your
Yeah,
post
I
and I
went
went ahead
on my
filled it
Facebook
out.
and Instagram, if you.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks,
Can I
Aaron.
also?
Yeah.
Okay, just put reminded me. On July 10th, there's the Utah Economic Alliance. If you're not sure, if you don't know who that group is, it's an economic alliance for the state, right? A bunch of economic professionals, but it's in our area this quarter. So they do quarterly meetings and they moved all around the state. July 10th, it's in Price. The ticket is a little pricey, but would love to have more representation from here other than just me. So, if anybody from this board or the commission or anybody wants to come, that would be great. That's July 10th. I can send out more info on that.
Yes,
Please, yeah.
Yeah,
send it
please
to all
do.
of us.
Yeah, and then the Eastern Economic Alliance, or oh my gosh, the Eastern Economic Summit is in Price also, and that's gonna be on October 14th. And that's for our region as well. It is kind of put together by USU. It was originally John Curtis's event, but it has kind of shifted, obviously. And so I'm on that planning committee, so I would love to have my people there as well. So I'm giving you plenty of notice, there's no excuses. And that's a free event in Price on October 14th. And I think that's it.
Wait. That's not the Conservative Climate Caucus.
No.
No, that's a different.
Sound like it.
No, it's the Eastern Economic
Okay,
Summit.
got it. And
Yeah.
he was doing a bunch of different events, and and everyone's been wondering how they're gonna carry out. their
Yeah.
events.
This is no longer, he's no longer
Oh, so
hosting it.
it's-
He'll come and I think he's doing a little speech, but.
Right, I got it.
Thanks, everyone. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Yeah, I will get you those.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Meeting.
Yeah, I think especially the safe carbon, like, yeah.
Yeah.
He has it.
And yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
To get some,
Hi.
How are you?
Hey, Samantha.
Ask Robin.
Oh, hey, you just
What matters?
Did you have your number?
I'm just gonna-
I feel like I need to get to answer all your questions.
Is
this
I was like, I'll help you with this question. Yeah, you decide.